Hello everyone, it's time to hit another road to Super Bowl today with Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As you can see, when you look at their last year, you can absolutely look at start of the year. That was tremendous. They were running high. I think they were like 7-1 or something like that, beating future Super Bowl champions in Seahawks 38-35 in a very, very good game. And Baker was an MVP candidate. Emeka Egbuka was a lock for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And yeah, there were we. And it ended miserably, man. Like, yeah, if you can hear scratches, that's just my cat. Every time I'm here, she just starts to scratch. I don't know why, so sorry for that. It's probably going to happen much more. Back to the Bucs. The rest of the year was tragic, and it was actually quite weird because Tampa Bay struggled with a lot of injuries, but most of them were like in early part of the years. As some of the guys started to come back, they just went worse, and I would say there is blame towards two guys. One is Todd Bowles, because his defense once again in second part of the year became atrocious, and that's something that happened for the third time in a row, and that's kind of inexcusable for defensive-minded head coach. So keeping him as a head coach, despite his previous success with this roster, I did not get that. I thought they would take a chance on someone else, whether it's striving for defensive-minded guys like Jesse Minter, who probably was out of the reach, but still there were, I think, better options than bringing him back. But it may be tied to Baker Mayfield, who is the second guy I would definitely blame. As much as I like Baker, he was my hot take as an MVP candidate, and he actually quite interestingly became one for first half of the year. He was truly bad as second half approach, like truly bad. He dragged this team, and I don't like to say it. I like Baker. I like his redemption story and comeback potential. And kind of his mentality, no matter where he plays, he gives it his best. I really like him. But he was a problem for them. And that's one problem that you did not thought you had heading into this offseason, where Baker has just 1 year left on his deal. And now you have to wonder, is he your future franchise guy? If you take last 8 to 10 games out of the equation, you say absolutely hell yes for his time with Tampa. But this is also the sample that you need to take into consideration, and I would say it's not as surprising that they have not, at least from what I'm hearing, started a negotiation about prolonging his contract. So it might be that him and Todd Bowles are in kind of like, let's show us if we can count on you in 2026. With Baker, I get it slightly less. If I was Tampa, I would actually start those conversations and point out to, well, you were not necessarily great. So perhaps hoping for some discount, because I still believe the talent and mentality and leadership is there for Baker. But with Aaron, I would let him go. Now, let's go and take a look at where this roster is at heading into this offseason, what I would do with that roster, what should they target in the draft, and where they are heading in terms of 2026, because they kind of ruled this division for the last couple of 3-4 years, and their reign might be over. Let's take a look. And we start with heart and soul of every team, that's offensive line, and that's obviously their quarterback. Starting with Baker, just to support some of what I have been saying about him by the numbers. When this guy was under pressure, his completion went under 50%. That's not good. And also, his turnover worthy percent ratio was 4%. So every 25 throw, one throw is supposed to be an interception. Despite that, he only threw 11 actual interceptions, but that to me tells more about luck, because he should have thrown about 20 or 25. DBs just did not convert on them. He also created 11 fumbles, so he was really mistake prone, and it just like from start of the season, he was riding like a really good end of variance. Towards the end, not so much. But I do still like him, man. I still do like him. What I like the most about this is though the offensive line in terms of the tackles, because Tristan Wirfs and Luke Gedeke are top 3 tackle duo in the league. Both are damn good pass protectors, allowing only 2 sacks across them through whole year. And in case of Wirfs, they are a special round blocker. So you have your key guys signed for several years to come. I think both are at least 3 years more. No, it's actually 4. So you are set. You are good to go. One thing that could be minor inconvenience was Luke get the key injuries last year, but he missed a couple of games. Not too much. He doesn't have like a history of that. You are good to go. They are in their prime, 28, 27. This is whether you go with Baker, whether you go with Aaron Glenn following the 26th season, this is your building blocks. In terms of interior, you would hope to be in better spot because drafting Graham Martin in the first round, I liked it. A lot of people did. But so far, he's just been decent. Nothing more than that. And especially like the second year when I was hoping for some leap, he just did not have it. Allowing 5 sacks, bring 9 penalties into the occasion. Not a first round value that you should get back when you're drafting a center this high. With Cody Mauch, we were all very hyped about what his third year is going to look like prior to him definitely talking about the extension. But we just did not get it. Like he played just a couple of snaps because of injury. So the jury is kind of out whether you will try to use it as an advantage for you as a Buccaneers and take bigger risk. It's like, okay, you have not played pretty much in the free, let's give Mass a discount, and you hope that the, not a meteoric rise, but really nice improvement in E2 is going to be there after this injury, or are you letting to play this out? I would probably take my chances and let it play out, but I think both options are very much in play. With Ben Bredesen, he reminds me of what I was saying about, the Saints guard. Dylan Raduns? No. Who was the Saints guy I was talking about? Guys, my memory sometimes is not great. Cesar Ruiz. Yeah, he's your veteran option that eventually you would like to upgrade. If he is your 5th worst option of your offensive line, you are quite happy with that. And that's the situation here. So he's a good, solid option, nothing more, but nothing less. And that's for offensive line when it's usually about your wing leg. Something to be actually quite happy with. So this is a good setup. The hope was this could have been a great setup. Like imagine if Graham Barton returned first round value and Cody Mauch was not getting injured. We might have been talking about the best offensive line in football, and I am not over exaggerating. There was a potential for that. It still could come to fruition, but the chances of that are much slimmer than they were prior to last year. Still a great funding for your team. Now let's take a look about the weaponry. Do they bring back Mike Evans or not? I think so. Like, despite cutting short his 1,000 yard every season, despite like not playing towards his elite status that I had on him prior to 2025, mostly due to injuries, I would still say that he's definitely a Bucs through and through. And if he did not leave Buccaneers year prior, I just don't see why he would do it now, because the team still has big aspiration, especially with Baker. This is not a team that's trying to enter a rebuild. Like, they are in for 2026, and Mike Evans is just a huge part of this. If Buccaneers, because they are not swimming in cap space, are like trying to be cheaper with him, trying to bring him back for something like 20 millions, is Mike Evans not going to give them hometown discount? Will he try to chase better money and ring somewhere else? I don't really see that happening. And at the same time, he could also be kind of pushy back. It's like, guys, you really freaking need me, because he gives them some other type that they don't necessarily have. He really completes this weaponry. So I think it's very mutually beneficial to get together. At the same time, it just did not happen yet. So maybe there are some other opportunities that he's exploring. We will have to wait and see. With Chris Godwin, bringing him back on the contract that they gave him was a very questionable move with the injury concerns. He came back, he was good, not great, not special, and I just don't see him returning over 30 million that you are committing to him in cap hit. There is of course no value for cutting him because that money would still be there, but when we are talking about about team option that they have for next year, I do struggle to see him back with this team. And it's not necessarily a bad situation for you, because Emeka Egbuka should be his really great successor. Yeah, the second part of the year was really iffy, but I do trust him to hit Jack's machine back, get confidence, and really get going with the whole offseason with Baker. Now, they also have several other interesting wide receivers that are, I would say, complementary pieces in Jalen McMillan and Tess Johnson. So this room with Mike Evans back is really damn well rounded. With Buck Irving, a lot of people might be, why have I not improved his status towards an amazing starter? He's been really good. I don't necessarily think he reached the heights of his rookie season last year. That doesn't mean I lost confidence in him, or that I don't think he's a future back of this team. I still do. It just wasn't enough to raise him, in my opinion. Sorry for that, but still damn good showcasing. Now what I was kind of missing was actually the raw numbers. Only one touchdown, just kind of 3.5 yard carry. That was not necessarily great numbers, though. You could definitely adjust some things to a lot of rotational pieces with offensive line because a lot of guys were injured and the run blocking was far from great. So really, I have not lost confidence in him. I have not lowered my opinion on him. It just has not been raised to second year. When talking about running backs, we have to mention Rashid White, who is a guy that you might think that I would be opposed to bringing him back because I was not a biggest Rashid White, let's say, a fan. But truth to be told, ever since they drafted Bucky and kind of lighted a fire under his ass, he's become what I wanted him to be, really good option. So this duo got me interested, really does. And I think they complement each other well. Is it enough for you to not truly hand this RB1 spot to Bucky and just bring Rashid on contract that would be close to $8 million a year? Is it smart investment of your resources? We will have to wait and see. I would not be opposed to it because I think they are really great duo together, but I would also see this two with Bucky as my lone and number one. Now, with tight ends, Cade Otton, to me, he's kind of just a guy, just a good, solid tight end. And, similar to Ben Bredesen, a guy that is workable, but doesn't necessarily elevate your room. And do I really want to pay this player when I'm really lacking cap space? I'm not so sure, man. When I looked at his situation last year, it was not bad, but it was not necessarily good either. Just 2 drops is good, but also just 1 touchdown, and catches were contested, and guys were actually on him. Only 45%, which for a tight end is definitely below my expectation. So to me, I would not bring him back. I would spend my money elsewhere, and I would look at this position in the draft, whether it's to look for a bigger upside or just to provide me not as good of a base as Cade Otton does, but 80% of that, and really be okay, I can get slightly worse for much cheaper, and I already have enough weapons in his 4 wide receivers, Bucky, perhaps Rashid White back, Tess Johnson is there. There's plenty of weaponry, and I don't necessarily need my tight ends to be the focal point of my passing offense, especially when Godwin, Aguka, they are demons from slot. But we will have to wait and see. I would not do that. Now, in terms of backups, I think Peyton Durham is kind of your base level tight end 2, provides some blocking. Not really something that necessarily ask him to be your offensive weapon in terms of pass catching, but like I said, you don't need that to, especially if you bring Rashid White back, because you have 5 wide receivers that I actually like. In that case, you would have 2 running backs. That's absolutely fine by me. Where you are lacking is, beside Baker, you don't have actually a quarterback on your roster. When you consider that Baker has 1 year left on his contract, it starts to be a little iffy. So I would actually look for either veteran here, but more about 5th round, high floor, low ceiling quarterback prospect, really a carry backup that I could get for 4 years for cheap. That would be my choice. Where I would make more investment is definitely this offensive line. Like we said, with tackles, you are set. So again, here I would just try to either bring veteran bandage or high floor, low ceiling backup in 4th, 5th round. Now, it's not necessarily as easy to find for offensive tackles, but there might be some guys that you feel like are maxed out, as they are, but you could get them for cheap. With interior, there is a different approach for me. With Ben Bredeson being a guy that I would eventually like to upgrade on, with Cody Mauch entering his final year of a contract that maybe you are not having money or you don't want to prolong, and Graham Barton not necessarily like fulfilling expectations, I would invest really high here. It might be as high as 1st round. I would not mind that big of investment. I would definitely like to move towards the guard, trying to upgrade Ben Bredeson's situation, but also you can look at it not going for an immediate starter, but looking for potential upside. So look for some raw athletes in 3rd round here as well, that you might just take like 2 years to bring back to power. In those scenarios, you still have Ben, you still have Barton, you probably have Cody, and then he can take over. So that's your Buccaneers offense. I think it's well set. You have to make some decisions. Rashid White, Kate Otton, Mike Evans being the biggest ones. I think it's actually quite straightforward. Bring Mike back, don't bring Otton back. And with Rashid White, I'm like 60-40 bringing him back, but depends on the price tag. Where you need to invest is this offensive line as well as quarterbacks, but I'm not necessarily saying you need to invest in terms of free agency or spend big rather than beside like the offensive guard. But again, here it's more spend big in terms of draft capital rather than actual money because you are not swimming in it. Let's take a look at this defense. In terms of edge, you really need it, Yaya Diaby, to make the step that he did in 2025 because he was this team's best pass rusher. He really was. What it does for you is also, well, he's off the contract after this year. The extension is coming and it's not going to be cheap. He was really delivering, winning over 15% of his pass rush opportunities, delivering 9 sacks, and really being, I wouldn't say like in ideal world your number 1, but really high end 2 or a low end 1, and you just can get along when you have a really good interior, which this team has, but not as much as some guys would probably think, because I love Vitavera. I think he's an absolute demon, though I would say he struggled a little bit more than I would like, not necessarily delivering this much in terms of pass rush. And you have Kalijah Kancey. With Kalijah, there is a long ongoing debate or almost a hate towards me that I am low on him. And I am compared to like general opinion. And it's just me not liking a guy that's very one-dimensional. He's active liability in terms of run defense. And whilst I do appreciate that getting pressure from interior is just super valuable, I don't think he gets enough of it for me to say, okay, it's absolutely worth for you to be a liability in terms of run defense, even though you have Vitavera next to. Like, imagine if he had like some average run defender next to him. That liability could get exposed even much more. So that's kind of where I stand, like very low on Kalijah, but I'm also intrigued what he's going to show after an injury that took his season pretty much the whole away. In terms of edge, you have Chris Braswell, you have David Walker, who I was very intrigued last of season, but unfortunately he was hurt prior to the year. So I'm very excited about him still as a prospect. I felt like he was a steal for the Bucs. He could have been drafted in the 2nd round. So if you are looking for a guy that could emerge as your true number 2 next to Diaby, I think this is the guy with most potential. But with Anthony Nelson and Chris Braswell, you have pretty damn good floor. So overall, like, your edge group is not great, not excellent, but absolutely freaking set. You have a really nice floor and a couple of young pieces that if they can step up, suddenly you are cooking with gas, especially when you consider that your interior is pretty damn good with Vitavera and Kalijah Kancey. One decision that they have to make is on Logan Hall, who stepped in and played well in Kalijah Kancey's absence, but is a guy that presumably is your number 3 defensive interior lineman, worth bringing back on as much money as he probably is going to demand on free agent market, and my answer is just no. Especially when you consider this is a really interesting class for defensive line overall. I would much rather let him go, hopefully pick up a compensatory pick for next offseason, and invest in this room through the draft. Because as you look at it, I think you are standing 7 strong in terms of really good rotation. You have one exceptional player in Vita, one really up-and-coming young talent in Diaby, though young, like he is 27, so he entered the league slightly older, but still on a rookie deal, and several other guys that could absolutely step in, whether it's Chris Braswell, Kalijah Kenzie, or David Walker. So I would not touch this room. I would collect the pick for Logan Hall for compensatory formula in next offseason, probably 5th round. I know, like, trading him would probably have been wiser. I think they didn't because of Kalijah Kenzie's injury. But overall, I'm like pretty happy with the state of this defensive line, given the fact that you just like not have necessarily enough money to like spend big on bringing some additions. Like obviously, if you can bring a number 1 pass rusher into this, that would be amazing. But in terms of how you need to manage your resources, I think you are set pretty well. Linebackers. Now, Lavonte David, I'm sorry, he's a Bucs legend. He might be a future Hall of Famer. We shall have to wait and see on that one. But he's declining. And it's not like he's not a good player still. I think he still is. But I would say they should move from him. And for Lavonte, just hanging his cleats right now would probably be to the most benefit for both sides, because I think if he says I want to come back, Buccaneers are not an organization that would say no, because they really appreciate their stars. A lot of players like want to play there. You know, it's a really nice weather, of course, but overall the culture is very, I would say, friendly towards players in this environment, and they are also repaying that with loyalty. So if he wants to play, I don't think Tampa necessarily is going to say, no, we don't want you anymore. But I would argue that this might actually be a little bit hurtful for him, because it's just decline, man, and sometimes it's not looking pretty. You want to see your guy out there, and unlike Demario Davis, unlike Bobby Wagner, these veterans, they are still balling out. I just don't see it with Lavonte. And with linebackers being at very interesting point with this draft, I would try to really be like, okay, with Silversia Dennis and this guy. Yeah, no, with Silversia you have your number 2. Let's bring number 1 guy and invest even the 1st round here, because I think why not? You know, someone who could be a worthy successor of Lavonte David. Whether we talk Sonny Styles, is he still on the board? We'll definitely have to wait and see how the teams are approaching this linebacker draft, because there are 2 names. One that's going to almost for certain be taken top 5, top 10. And with Sonny Styles, we have to wait and see. I've seen some guys having him even top 5, sometimes slipping to 20. So this would be a guy I'm definitely looking for. Could it also be a situation that they perhaps talk mutually each other? I think this is one of the organization and even player that this could also happen, that Lavonte is not signing with anyone, and if after the draft Tampa was not able to secure a guy to replace him, immediately perhaps they will still, I believe, make an investment here. But let's say the guy that would be immediate successor was not available in 1st round, or they had a tremendous opportunity to snatch someone else, maybe falling, then, bring him back for 1 more year. That would probably be my more favorite approach. Does it necessarily suit well with Lavonte? That's something we will have to wait and see. How, but in terms of, am I super happy for him to be my linebacker 1? Not anymore, unfortunately. Now let's take a look at this secondary. And one guy that really put chips on the table and bet on himself was Jamal Dean. And it paid up, man. He agreed to lower his salary for 2025 in kind of exchange. Yeah, cats are playing. In kind of exchange for having just 1 year left on his contract, he kind of bet on himself, and he had a tremendous year. With the like Mauch, that there was perhaps a chance that he would be cut if he did not lower his salary, etc. Like, I don't think so that they would bring him back. And when you look at the situation, should they? Like, obviously, you are looking at my screen and it's like, okay, they would, this would not be a bad situation to bring another like number one outside corner in, because that would allow everybody to kind of settle into their natural habitat in terms of this cornerback room. Yes, at the same time, you have invested heavily in terms of draft capital as well as money, and Sam McCollum already prolonged, that you kind of need to let it go, trust your own drafty guys, and not trying to persuade a guy that perhaps you have not been on best terms because of last year's like contract disputes. You know, I don't think he would take a small salary to come back, and you just don't have the money unless you obviously push some cap hits towards the future, but you have already done some bits of it, and does 2026 necessarily feel like a year to really push, which would justify, in my eyes, to push money down the line? I don't necessarily think so. So to me, this should be just a year in which like you are steady. You are not pushing, you are not like cutting players, trying to like recoup a lot of picks, just be steady. And to me, that means entrust Benjamin Morrison with cornerback 2, or if the opportunities present itself in the draft, let's take a CB1 in the first round if there's a really good guy to take for. And with Jacob Parrish, Benjamin Morrison, you have good enough like base of young corners that if you go with this, I do like it. I'm not saying that you just cannot improve this room, that you should not be bringing veterans in case you are not bringing Jamal Dean back, but it should all be with like small cost and with in mind pushing these guys to play. And you can kind of do that when you have Tyke Smith and Antoine Winfield, two of like the better safeties duos in the league. Like, that's in my mind, is there actually someone better than these guys? Let me think on this one. No, like I would definitely put them in top 3. Like, they together really look excellent. And with Tyke, you can just like kind of see some images of Antoine Winfield and him. Like, he is really looking very similar to this guy. So having two Antoine Winfield and Antoine Winfield Juniors for your secondary, I think that justifies and gives you right to go with young corners, because they can save a lot of problems that this could create. Obviously, like, I don't want to leave this room intact. I would invest in it, but I would spend draft capital rather than cap hit here. Overall, when you look at the situation in terms of backups, you are much more set in terms of your defensive line rather than in terms of your secondary. So fill this room with some cheaper options or draft situations. When you look at this in terms of draft, I think the situation is actually pretty set. If things go as I predict they would, bring Mike Evans back, don't bring Kane Norton, whether you bring Rashid White back or not, actually does not make too much of a difference. And even if you bring Lavonte David, I think you should absolutely invest in linebacker. To me, you have a situation in which you invest in tight end, cornerback, backup QB, interior offensive line, and linebacker. The one place that you kind of need to invest seems to be linebacker or tight end, depends on how you do with the Kate Otton and Lavonte David. But at the same time, I would argue that in both scenarios, you don't need to take a guy in first round if the value does not match, because the other two positions are enough of premium positions as well as enough of potential upgrade that you can get that you can justify going for best fit. So to me, you have first 3 rounds, you need 4 types of players. In case of like tight ends, you probably can find your base level tight ends and like look for like what Jackson Hawes was able to do, like look for these type of players that love run blocking, pass blocking, and are kind of an extension of your offensive line, because you have a lot of perimeter weapons that you can absolutely rely on. in terms of where I see the Tampa Bay situation going, I'm not sure. Like, it kind of all falls on what kind of Baker do we get. And I cannot say I'm 100% sure that we would get a top 10, top 12 Baker that we kind of grew accustomed in first couple of years with Tampa here. So there is big variance there. If Baker is back to his, start of last year, and the offensive line is healthy, like, you are cooking with gas. You definitely are. At the same time, if he continues to struggle, I think it might actually, like, really not necessarily fall apart, but just like take away from this team in terms of what this team is going to look like in 2027, because I can definitely see a team that doesn't have Mike Evans, that doesn't have Lavonte David, doesn't have Baker, doesn't have Todd Bowles, doesn't have Chris Godwin, and like, it's about a new breath of fresh air, which, why not? But obviously, when you are a Bucs fan, or if you are a Bucs fan, you don't want that to happen, because that would mean that 2026 goes really sideways. On that note, you let me know how do you feel about Bucs' future and presence, and we will see each other with next episode that would take a look at their NFC South rival in Carolina Panthers. Bye bye.